Are you ready for a challenge that could transform your entire life? Today, we're diving into a powerful technique inspired by the legendary Neville Goddard that has the potential to revolutionize your reality.
All right, ready to dive deep.
Let's do it.
Today we're exploring Neville Goddard's Law and the Promise.
Oh, a classic.
It's a foundational text for anyone into manifesting in the power of the mind, would you say?
Absolutely, a cornerstone.
What always strikes me about Law and the Promise is how Neville takes these profound, kind of heady spiritual concepts and grounds them in real-life stories.
It's so engaging that way.
Right. He doesn't just throw out theories. He shows you the power of imagination in action.
And that's what makes it so compelling, I think.
Totally. So we've got our notes, highlighted passages, all ready to unpack how these concepts actually work.
And most importantly,
Exactly, how our listeners can use them.
that's the goal.
Okay, so Chapter 1, the law, jumps right in with a core principle, right?
Right in the deep end.
Imagining creates reality.
That's the one.
Now, I'll admit, the first time I read that, I was like, is this just wishful thinking?
It's easy to dismiss it at first.
But the more I delved into Neville, the more I saw the depth behind it.
It really challenges you to rethink reality.
It does. So can you break down what he means by that? Because it's more than just thinking positive thoughts, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's about recognizing that our imagination is not just fantasy.
It's not just in our heads.
It's the very force that shapes our experiences.
Whoa.
Neville says, man is all imagination, and God is man and exists in us and we in him.
So it's like we're all this divine imagination in action.
Exactly. It's not a power reserved for a few special people.
It's in all of us.
It's inherent, a divine power operating within each of us.
I love that.
He calls it divine imagining, but he clarifies that it's not separate from human imagination.
Okay, so it's not like there's this other imagination out there.
It's our imagination.
But with a capital D.
Right. Divine imagining is human imagining working at a higher degree.
Okay, that's a good distinction.
It elevates it, right.
So how do we tap into that higher degree of imagination? That's where Chapter 2, Dwell Therein, comes in, right?
Yes, this is where Neville gets super practical.
Practical advice.
He says, to realize a desire, we must dwell in the feeling of the wish fulfilled.
Dwelling.
It's not enough to just think about what we want. We have to actually feel the state of having it.
Ooh, I like that. Feeling it.
Like living as if it's already real.
Okay, that makes sense.
Have you ever found yourself daydreaming about a vacation?
Oh, all the time.
You're not just listing off things you want to do, are you?
No way. I'm like feeling the sun, smelling the ocean air, tasting the local food.
You're there.
I'm practically on the beach already.
Exactly. And Neville gives these amazing examples of this principle working in people's lives.
Stories.
One that comes to mind is about a doctor and his wife who dreamed of building an apartment building but didn't have the money.
Classic manifestation dilemma.
Right. So they decided to take these imaginative trips through their completed building, every detail, walking through each room, picturing tenants living there, feeling the pride of ownership.
They were fully immersed in the feeling of having it, even though it didn't exist physically yet.
Exactly. They were dwelling therein, and what happened next is wild.
I am on the edge of my seat.
This contractor they barely knew walks into their office and basically begs to build their apartment for them.
No way, like out of the blue.
Yeah. And then the financing falls into place effortlessly, like magic.
So their persistent dwelling in that state of wish fulfilled actually attracted the resources to make it happen.
Like a magnet. It's a powerful example of how our imagination can literally shape our reality.
That's incredible. Are there other examples like that?
Oh, definitely. There's another story about a woman who wanted to move into a bigger house.
Okay.
Every night for 4 nights, she would sleep in her desired home in her imagination.
Imaginary sleep.
Feeling all the sensations, like she was really there.
I love that.
And on the 5th day, someone buys her old house just like that, and she's able to find and buy her dream home.
Whoa, that's amazing. It's like our imagination can influence not just our own lives, but the circumstances around us too.
It's all connected, right?
It really makes you think about the power we have, maybe more than we realize.
Absolutely. And it's not just about material things either.
Right, it's about creating a life that truly aligns with what we want.
Our deepest desires.
And speaking of aligning with our desires, the next chapter, Turning the Wheel Backward, introduces a concept that I know a lot of people find both fascinating and challenging.
I can see why.
You're talking about revising the past, right?
That's the one. It took me a while to wrap my head around that one.
It's a mind bender.
It is. But Neville teaches that we have the ability to change the past by reimagining events as they ought to have occurred.
So it's like mentally going back and editing a bad memory.
Exactly. He calls it mental falsification, and he argues that it can break the cycle of repeating unwanted experiences.
So we're not just stuck with the past.
We can change it in our minds.
And by doing so.
We influence our present and future.
Okay, I'm seeing a pattern here.
What's that?
Our imagination is not bound by time. It can influence the past, the present, and the future.
You got it?
That's wild. So tell me about some examples of this revision in action.
Oh, there are some great ones in the book.
I bet.
So Neville tells this story about FB, who got a super negative letter from a real estate agent about selling his property.
Ouch.
Right. But instead of dwelling on the negativity, FB decided to rewrite the letter in his imagination.
Mental rewrite.
Making it positive, confirming the sale at the price he wanted. And guess what? A few days later, the agent calls with good news. A buyer at the desired price.
No way. He literally rewrote his reality.
It's amazing, right?
And is there another story? I feel like there's got to be another one.
Oh, there is, and it gets even more mind-blowing.
Lay it on me.
Neville talks about this woman, LH, who had chronic back pain for 39 years due to a childhood accident.
39 years? That's a long time.
I know, so she decided to revise that accident in her imagination.
Reliving it.
But this time, she experienced herself jumping off the swing and landing perfectly safely on her feet.
So she mentally undid the accident that caused the pain.
That's it. And get this. Within 2 months, her back pain vanished. Gone.
No way. Are you serious?
It's a powerful example of how imagination can heal not just emotional wounds, but physical ones too.
It's almost like our minds have this power to rewrite the script of our lives.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, if our imagination is so potent, does that mean there's no such thing as fiction?
Whoa, that's a deep question.
That's what Neville explores in Chapter 4, There Is No Fiction.
Intriguing title.
He argues that everything starts as an imaginal act, and that today's fiction can become tomorrow's reality.
He uses that example of the novel Futility, right?
That's the one. It's eerie how accurately that book, published in 1898, foreshadowed the sinking of the Titanic in 1912.
So many similarities, it's wild.
It's almost as if the author's imagination somehow contributed to the event happening.
So even our creative works, like stories, can shape reality.
Neville highlights the power of writers, suggesting that they're kind of like prophets glimpsing potential futures.
Wow, that's heavy stuff.
Makes you think about the stories we tell ourselves and how they might be influencing our own reality, huh?
Big time. It's like we're all authors of our own lives in a way.
And every thought is a brushstroke.
I like that. Speaking of seemingly small things having a big impact, subtle threads is next, right?
Right. This chapter dives into how even those little, seemingly insignificant imaginal acts can create ripple effects.
Okay, I'm curious, what kind of subtle threads are we talking about here?
Well, Neville talks about this guy, TK, who won $84,000 at the racetrack by simply imagining himself collecting the winnings.
Just by imagining it.
And then, get this, someone else who heard TK's story decided to try the same technique and won $16,000.
So it wasn't just luck, their imagination played a role.
Exactly. Neville emphasizes that it's not just about those big, conscious efforts to manifest.
It's the little things, too.
It's about paying attention to even our idle thoughts and daydreams, because those have the potential to manifest, too.
He says, every thought is a seed. So we must watch our thoughts and be careful what we are thinking.
It's a reminder to be mindful, even when we're just letting our minds wander.
Be careful what you wish for, right?
Exactly. But also, be aware of what you're unintentionally wishing for with your thoughts.
Okay, so how do we make those imaginal acts, big or small, even more potent?
That's what Visionary Fancy is all about.
Ooh, another good chapter title.
Neville argues that sensory vividness is key.
So it's not just about thinking about what we want, but feeling it, experiencing it with all our senses.
Exactly. He tells this story about a woman who desperately wanted to see a sold-out theater performance.
Okay.
Instead of trying to buy a ticket from a scalper, she just sat in her living room and vividly imagined herself at the show.
Imaginary theater.
Feeling the plush seats, hearing the murmurs of the crowd, experiencing the whole thing.
I'm guessing she got to see the show somehow.
She did. As she was walking by the theater, a complete stranger offered her a free ticket.
Wow. It's like her imagination somehow orchestrated the circumstances to fulfill her desire.
Exactly. So it's not just about the visualization, it's about adding those sensory details, the feeling, to amplify the power of our imagination.
Makes sense. Do you have another story about this?
Oh, yeah, there's another good one about FB who imagined finding a specific record album.
Oh.
When he went to the store, the salesman told him they didn't have it. But as the salesman reached for the empty display case, guess what?
The album's there.
The complete album.
Yeah.
It's like FB's imagination had willed it into existence.
These stories are amazing. It really makes you question what's real and what's a projection of our own imagination.
It's all a bit mind-bending, isn't it?
Totally. It makes you think about the power we have, maybe more than we realize.
Absolutely. And that brings us to Chapter 7, Moods, where Neville argues that moods are not just reflections of circumstances, but active forces that shape those circumstances.
So it's not about letting our circumstances dictate our moods, but about choosing the mood that aligns with the reality we want to create.
Exactly. He says, the only thing you can really control in life is your own mood.
I like that.
And he illustrates this with a story about our friend TK, the racetrack winner.
Oh, right. Her.
She was facing some financial difficulties, but decided to adopt a mood of gratitude and joy, repeating the phrase, "Isn't it wonderful?" over and over again.
And that shift in mood led to a positive change in her finances.
It did. Shortly after, she received a substantial gift from a long-lost friend.
It's like our moods act as magnets, attracting experiences that vibrate at a similar frequency.
Love that analogy. And this leads us to another powerful concept that Neville calls through the looking glass, which is also the title of the next chapter.
Ooh, I love that title.
It really captures the essence of what he's talking about.
It evokes this sense of stepping into a different reality.
Exactly. Neville argues that we perceive the world through the lens of our imagination. By changing our imaginal state, we transform our experience of the world.
Okay, I'm following.
He says, change your conception of yourself, and you will automatically change the world in which you live. Do not try to change people. They are only messengers telling you who you are. Revalue yourself, and they will confirm the change.
It's like those optical illusions where you can see two different images depending on how you look at them.
Perfect analogy. And he tells a story about a woman bedridden with serious health issues.
Okay.
Instead of focusing on her pain and limitations, she imagined herself running freely on a beach, feeling the sand between her toes, the wind in her hair.
So she was basically using her imagination to escape her reality.
More than that, her imaginal act actually led to her miraculous recovery.
Wow. So by shifting her focus away from illness and dwelling in the state of health and vitality, she opened up the possibility for healing.
It's a reminder that we have more power over our experience than we often realize, even when things seem impossible.
This idea of stepping through the looking glass is powerful.
It invites us to find that looking glass moment in our own lives.
That opportunity to shift our perspective and create a new reality.
And if we want to make that shift even more potent, we need to fully embrace the power of enter into, which is the title of the next chapter.
Okay, I'm sensing this is about more than just casual visualization.
You're right. Neville emphasizes the importance of full emotional and sensory engagement in our imaginal acts.
So it's not just about mentally picturing it, but feeling it, experiencing it with our whole being.
It's about becoming the actor who fully embodies the role.
I love that.
He shares a story about this woman, JS, who was worried about her brother who was in the hospital with a serious illness.
Okay.
So instead of picturing him sick in bed, she imagined him healthy and busy, remodeling his kitchen.
So she imagined him doing what he loved in his element.
Exactly. And that night, she had this vivid experience of being at her brother's bedside.
Oh.
But his hand felt strong and healthy, and he told her everything was all right.
And was he actually better?
The next day, she got a call from his wife saying he was miraculously recovering and wouldn't need surgery.
Wow, that's amazing. It's like her imaginal act of seeing him healthy actually influenced his physical reality.
It really highlights the importance of belief and desire.
He uses that phrase, faith plus love is self-commission.
We must not only believe, but also deeply desire the state we're imagining.
So enter into those visualizations with complete conviction, feeling as if it's already a reality.
That's the key. And this brings us to a concept that really stretches our understanding of reality, things which do not appear.
Okay, now we're getting into the really mind-bending stuff.
Buckle up. Neville dives into the idea that the physical world is an outpicturing of the imaginal world.
So our inner world creates our outer world.
Exactly. He says, what you are inwardly, you are outwardly. It's like our imagination is a blueprint, and the physical world is the structure built from that blueprint.
So our imagination is the architect of our reality.
And he tells this great story about a woman who needed a ride but had no way to get one.
Okay.
So she imagined herself offering a ride to a stranger.
Wait, she imagined giving a ride when she needed one?
I know, sounds counterintuitive, but moments later, a car pulls up and the driver offers her a ride.
No way. And I bet it was exactly the car and driver she visualized.
You got it. It was a perfect match. It shows how our imagination can work in the most unexpected ways.
It's like by imagining herself in the position of giving, she attracted the experience of receiving.
Exactly. This chapter really encourages us to consider all those seemingly coincidental events in our lives.
Could they be the result of our own unnoticed imaginal activity?
It's a fascinating question to ponder. Okay, so we've talked about imagination as this powerful force.
But how does it all relate to God? That's where chapter 11, the potter, comes in, right?
Yes. Neville uses that biblical metaphor of God as the potter shaping human experience.
So instead of seeing God as this external force, he's suggesting that God works through our imagination.
Exactly. He says the potter, God, molds the clay, you, into any form he desires. But you are the potter, imagining yourself to be what you desire to be. Mastering our imaginal powers is essential for realizing our full potential.
So we're not just the clay,
We're the potter, too.
co-creating with God, using our imagination.
Exactly. He tells a story about an artist who wanted recognition and success.
Oh?
She consistently imagined herself as a successful artist, exhibiting her work in prestigious galleries, receiving acclaim for her talent.
And of course, it all came true for her.
Her inner vision became her outer reality. We're not just puppets in the hands of fate. We're active participants in shaping our reality.
Okay, we've talked about revising the past, but what about revising the present? Is that possible?
It is. That's what the pruning shears of revision is all about.
Love the imagery.
Neville reminds us that we're not bound by appearances.
We have the power to change things.
We can prune away unwanted elements and cultivate what we desire in the present moment.
It's like we're given this garden that's already planted, but we have the power to prune away the weeds and cultivate the flowers we want.
Beautiful analogy. He tells a story about a woman who used revision to help her son and a struggling student. She imagined them succeeding, achieving their goals, overcoming their challenges.
So she revised their present to align with her desire for their well-being.
And it had a real impact on their lives.
That's incredible. It's like we can use our imagination to influence not just our own lives, but the lives of those around us.
Absolutely. And it brings us to a question that often comes up when we talk about the power of imagination. If it's so powerful, do we have any free will?
That's a big one. What does Neville say about that?
He dedicates a whole chapter to it, free will, where he argues that while imagination creates, we have free will in choosing what to imagine.
Okay, I'm listening.
He says, man has free will to choose the idea he will dwell upon. But once he chooses an idea, he is compelled by his nature to become that which he contemplates.
So we have the power to choose our thoughts.
And once we choose, our imagination gets to work bringing them to life.
It's like we're the directors of our own mental movies.
He tells a story about encountering a panhandler.
Oh.
Instead of giving him money, he chose to use his imagination to help the man find a job.
What did he imagine?
He vividly imagined the man telling him that he had found employment and was no longer in need.
And what happened?
A few months later, he runs into the man again, and guess what?
He had a job.
He did. He found a job shortly after their previous encounter.
It's a beautiful example of using our imagination to not only help ourselves, but to make a positive impact on others.
That's the power of it. And this leads us to the creative moment, where Neville explores the idea that there are specific moments when our imaginal activity is especially potent.
Ooh, like there are times when the universe is more receptive to our imaginal seeds.
Love that imagery. He tells the story of J.R.B., who had a waking dream that manifested into reality just moments later.
Wow, so how do we tap into these creative moments?
Neville suggests that it's about acting on our imaginal vision, rather than just reacting to circumstances.
Taking inspired action.
Exactly, aligning ourselves with the creative power of the universe.
Not just by imagining, but by acting as if it's already happening.
Sometimes these moments come upon us spontaneously, like sudden insights or intuitive nudges.
It's about being open to those moments and having the courage to act on them.
Exactly. It's about being in the flow, trusting the creative process.
Okay, so we've covered so much from the basic principle that imagining creates reality to the power of dwelling in the feeling of our wish fulfilled. revising the past and present, and recognizing those potent creative moments.
It's a lot to take in.
But it's also fascinating. But Neville goes even deeper, right? He delves into the mystical and spiritual implications of his teachings.
That's where we're headed next time. We'll explore Neville's personal mystical experiences and the profound meaning of the promise.
I can't wait. This is where things get really interesting.
Welcome back.
Back for more of Law and the Promise.
We've covered a lot of ground already, but now I'm excited to delve into the more mystical side of Neville's work.
Right. We touched on the idea that the Bible might be more symbolic, like a roadmap, than a literal historical account.
Yes. It's not about the events themselves, but what those events represent in our own inner journey.
I'm really curious to hear more about that.
So to understand Neville's perspective, we need to grasp that he believed the Bible is not a historical record, but a symbolic representation of our own individual journey to spiritual awakening.
So it's like a mirror reflecting our own inner landscape.
Exactly. It's a psychological drama playing out within our own consciousness.
Okay, I'm with you.
And one of the most pivotal concepts for Neville is the promise.
The promise, okay.
Which he equates with the realization of our true identity as God.
Whoa, that's a big one.
It is, and this realization is symbolized by the birth of the sun within each of us.
That's powerful imagery.
It is, right?
The birth of the sun as a metaphor for spiritual awakening.
Exactly. And Neville believed each of us has the potential to experience this birth of the sun within our own consciousness.
So it's not about a literal sun.
No, it's about awakening to the Christ within, that divine spark in every human being.
So this promise is not some external reward or a far-off event.
No, it's something we cultivate through our imagination, our inner work.
It's about realizing a truth that's already present within us.
Exactly. It's like uncovering a treasure buried deep within our own consciousness.
And Neville's own mystical experiences played a huge role in shaping his understanding of this promise.
Absolutely. They were pivotal for him.
Well, let's talk about those experiences.
Okay, which one first?
I know he talks about having some pretty mind-blowing visions and insights.
Oh, he does. One that stands out is his experience in San Francisco in 1959.
What happened?
He had this incredibly vivid dream filled with all this artistic imagery, but then suddenly,
Plot twist.
he feels this powerful vibration at the base of his skull.
Okay, that sounds intense. What happened next?
This vibration marked the beginning of a profound mystical state. He wakes up from the dream, but finds himself completely enclosed within his own skull, like trapped inside his own mind.
Whoa, that sounds claustrophobic.
It was. He felt this overwhelming urge to escape, and through sheer willpower, he pushes himself out through the base of his skull.
He pushed himself out of his skull.
It's like he was being reborn from his own mind.
Wow.
And when he looks back at his physical body lying in the bed, it's pale and tossing like it just went through something traumatic.
But he was separate from it.
Existing as pure consciousness.
So he's having an out-of-body experience at this point.
Yes. But it doesn't end there.
There's more.
He becomes aware of another vibration coming from a corner of the room.
Another vibration.
And as he investigates, he realizes it's coming from a small bundle on the floor. A baby wrapped in swaddling clothes.
Hold on, a baby just appears in the room.
That's what he experiences, and his 3 older brothers are there too, and they're completely bewildered by this baby.
It's like witnessing a miracle.
And Neville, in this disembodied state, lifts the baby with invisible hands and asks, "How is my sweetheart?" The baby smiles, and then Neville wakes up back in his physical body.
What a powerful image. Being trapped in the skull and then being reborn through the base of the skull, followed by the appearance of this baby.
So much symbolism.
I'm starting to see how it relates to the promise, this idea of spiritual transformation.
Exactly. Being trapped inside the skull could represent the limitations of our conditioned mind, and the rebirth through the base of the skull symbolizes breaking free from those limitations.
And the appearance of the baby, this miraculous birth.
It could be interpreted as the birth of Christ consciousness within Neville himself.
The son being born is the realization of his own divine nature.
Exactly. But this wasn't his only mystical experience.
Really? There are more.
Oh, yeah. 5 months later, he has another vision.
Okay, tell me about it.
This time, he finds himself in this simply furnished room and encounters a young boy, early teens, leaning against an open door.
Who's the boy?
It's David, the David from the Bible.
Whoa, so Neville is experiencing himself as the father of David.
Yes. He feels no different from who he is in that moment, yet he knows this boy's his son, and David recognizes him as his father.
This is starting to feel like more than just a personal vision.
It's pointing to a deeper meaning to the biblical stories, right?
Like we all have the potential to experience this fatherhood of David.
This realization of our divine nature, the Christ within.
And this fatherhood is symbolic, of course.
Of course. It's not about a literal father-son relationship.
It's about recognizing the divine spark that resides within each of us.
Exactly. We are all, in a sense, the father of our own awakened consciousness.
Okay, so these visions are pointing to a reality that goes beyond the literal interpretations of the Bible.
It's about an inner spiritual experience that's accessible to anyone who's willing to do the inner work.
Do the work.
And Neville shares one final vision that reinforces this.
Another one.
It takes place in a dream where he sees these hands gently removing something from the crown of his head.
Okay.
And as the hands ball upward, he sees this tiny figure, no bigger than his thumb, emerge from his skull.
It's like he's witnessing the birth of his spiritual self.
And he describes this tiny figure as a perfect replica of himself, complete in every detail.
So it's him but tiny?
He calls it the Ancient of Days, connecting it to that biblical image of the eternal divine essence.
Wow.
So he's seeing a miniature version of his own divine essence being born from his mind.
That's some powerful imagery.
It is. And Neville believed that these experiences, while personal to him, were symbolic of a universal truth that's available to everyone.
We all have that potential.
He saw the Bible as a guide to this inner awakening, a roadmap to realizing our divine nature.
Okay, so we've explored these incredible visions, and they really challenge how we understand the Bible,
Yeah.
but also ourselves.
They do, right?
They invite us to explore a deeper reality, one that's shaped by our imagination and connected to a divine source within.
And that's where we'll leave it for now.
I'm ready for more. I feel like we've just scratched the surface.
Oh, we have. But these are some big concepts to digest.
I'm already feeling my perspective shift a bit.
It's a process.
And I know there's even more to uncover as we continue to explore the promise.
Welcome back.
Ready to wrap up our deep dive into law and the promise.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. We've covered so much ground, from those practical techniques of dwelling therein and revising the past, to those mind-blowing mystical experiences and interpretations of the Bible.
We've gone deep.
And now I'm really trying to connect the dots, between the practical and the spiritual. Like, what does it all mean?
That's the key, right? To bring it all together.
Neville's teachings offer a path for not just manifesting our desires, but also for realizing our true nature, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And at the heart of it all is this concept of the promise.
Right. We talked about in the last part, the promise being this realization of our true identity as God, symbolized by the birth of the Son within our consciousness.
It's a powerful idea.
But I'm still grappling with what that actually means, practically speaking. How does that realization play out in our everyday lives?
That's the question, isn't it? It's easy to get caught up in the symbolism and the mystical experiences, but the true power of the promise lies in its transformative effect on how we live, how we see ourselves, and how we interact with the world.
So it's not just about having some mystical vision or understanding the Bible in a new way.
No, it's about how that understanding changes us from the inside out.
It's like graduating from being a character in the play to becoming the playwright, realizing we have a hand in creating the story.
Love that analogy. And this shift in perspective, this awakening to our divine nature, is not about achieving some distant future state.
It's about realizing a truth that's already present within us.
Exactly. It's about uncovering that hidden treasure we've been carrying all along.
It makes you wonder what we're capable of.
It really does.
Neville believed that this realization is the ultimate goal of human existence.
The fulfillment of our spiritual potential,
Returning to our true home.
realization of our oneness with the source of all creation.
He says, the promise is the awakening to the truth that you are God, not a being made in the image of God, but God himself.
It's a powerful statement.
It is, but I can see how it connects to everything we've discussed. If our imagination is truly the power of God working within us,
Then realizing our true identity as God means stepping into our full creative power.
it takes us out of the role of victim and puts us firmly in the driver's seat.
Exactly. And it's not just about manifesting material possessions or changing our circumstances.
Why, it's bigger than that.
It's about realizing our potential to create a life that reflects our highest values, our deepest desires, our most authentic selves.
So how do we actually step into this realization? It feels almost too big to grasp.
It's a process, a journey. And Neville believed that the path is paved with the conscious cultivation of our imagination.
Cultivating our imagination.
By learning to use our imagination deliberately and creatively, we tap into that divine power within.
And start to shape our reality in alignment with our truest selves. Okay, so it's more than just wishful thinking or positive affirmations.
It's about aligning our entire being, thoughts, feelings, actions, with the reality we want to experience.
It takes effort.
It does. It takes discipline and a willingness to challenge our limiting beliefs about ourselves and the world around us.
Catching ourselves when we slip back into old patterns.
Exactly. And choosing to step into the perspective of the promise.
It sounds like building a new muscle, It takes practice.
It does, but the more we practice, the more natural it becomes.
We start to see the world differently.
We respond to situations from a place of power and creativity rather than fear and limitation.
Like we're rewriting the script of our lives.
Exactly, and that's the beauty of the promise. It's not about conforming to some external standard or dogma.
It's about individuality.
It's about discovering and expressing the unique, divine spark that resides within each of us.
I love that. So we've come full circle, haven't we?
We have.
From those concrete steps of using our imagination to manifest desires, to the profound realization that we are, in essence, God expressing ourselves in human form.
It's a lot to take in.
It is, but it's also incredibly inspiring.
It really is. And Neville leaves us with this powerful invitation. Dare to assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled and watch the world play its part in bringing it to pass.
It's about having the courage to believe in the power of our imagination.
Trusting that we are capable of creating a reality that reflects our truest selves.
And remembering that we're not alone on this journey.
The promise is not just for a select few.
It's for everyone.
We all have that potential to awaken to our divine nature, to become the creators of our own reality.
That's a beautiful message. It's both empowering and spiritually profound.
It's the essence of Neville's teachings, I think.
Well, this has definitely lit a fire in me to keep learning and experimenting. What about you?
Oh, absolutely. I'm always digging deeper into Neville.
And I encourage our listeners to do the same. Pick up Law and the Promise, read it, reread it, and see how it speaks to you.
There's so much to discover in those pages.
And for those of you who are ready to dive even deeper into these transformative ideas,
be sure to subscribe to Affirmnosis.
We've got more life-changing topics and empowering explorations waiting for you.